Hi, today I'm looking at photographing house martins. Well, actually not today, it's been all week. Every day of this week I've topped that puddle up. We haven't had much rain this week, just one day, and it wasn't particularly heavy. The house martins are coming in and picking the mud up, but not very often. Whether they're going elsewhere for mud as well, and I haven't discovered it. There's a whole series of small cottages over that way, and I can't get into the area. That's very private. But they're not coming here often, but I've spent quite a bit of time trying.
Fortunately, I can get the car very close to the puddle, because that's always a problem with water. It's very heavy stuff.
There's no regular time they're coming in to pick up the mud. Sometimes it's in the morning, sometimes it's in the afternoon. When it's in the afternoon, I can do them from the car window because the sun is that away. In the morning, it's a bit more difficult, but I can put the hide up in the hedgerow over there. When I put the hide up, I am actually very close to the pool, but house martins, very tolerant birds. They nest on our houses. They're very used to people and obstacles, moving around in farmyards, etc. So they took no notice of the hide when I did it this morning, but you are very, very close to them.
This is the Buteo single person hide. It has various options on the apertures, but if you're using the front of it, you've got an upper aperture and a lower aperture. So I'm using the lower one. I want to be down close to the floor. And then I'm sitting on my stool, but using the rear LCD screen extended and tilted upwards, so I can look through that and see what's going on. House martins are very fast moving birds and very jerky. This is at normal speed, and they're very gregarious too, so when one comes down to mud, another one comes to join it, and very quickly we've got a crowd. So getting pictures of individual birds can be quite difficult. You've got to wait quite a while to get an isolated bird. I'm shooting at my normal ISO of 1600, but I kept the aperture wide open at 4.5 because I didn't want that background coming into focus. That meant my shutter speeds were very fast. I was getting 12,500 at a time, so when they did this flicking of the wings, I was getting those sharp too. The lens, the 150 to 400mm, but very rarely at the 400mm end, I was having to zoom back, because I'm so close to the birds. So most of them are taken 250, 300mm. It takes quite a lot of effort for these small birds to be able to pick up the mud, and they clearly can't carry very much. He's got a reasonable amount then, and then drops it. And this flicking of the wings is all a part of that effort. It pulls the mud up and has to stretch his wings. Now as you're watching this from the hide, you start to think there's a great opportunity here for Procapture. As the birds are launching into the air, if anything, they're coming slightly towards the hide or going off to the left. So that's a great opportunity for Procapture. It really depends upon the wind direction. If the wind's blowing from the wrong way, you'll have the backs of the birds to you. You want the birds facing you or sideways. So there was hardly any wind, but they were going to my left or slightly forwards. So I've got the Procapture set for 50 frames per second. That means I get continuous autofocus, and if they went off to the left, it was tracking them very well. If they came towards me, it did struggle, because these are very fast flying birds. They take off far faster than normal small birds do when they're leaping out of water. And using the OM-1 Mk2, I've got the Procapture set up to SH2, which gives me continuous focus and 50 frames per second. and then I have it set up for 25 frames before I press the button and 25 frames after I press the button. That's half a second before, half a second after. I don't need any longer than that. Now, I'm not going to tell you that Procapture gets this right every time. It doesn't, but it gets it right an awful lot of the time. You end up with a lot of very nice flight pictures quite easily. Important to me that I take a small group shot as well as individual birds. One day a publisher is going to ask me for a group of house martins.
I've been keeping an eye on this puddle all week and I've topped it up every day. It's Friday morning and finally it's been worthwhile. This has been the busiest session I've had so far in this hide. The birds have been here constantly since I got in the hide, and been lots of activity. I've been doing video stills and Procapture. So it makes it feel worthwhile. All that time I've put into this. It's not just topping it up and sitting here, but you've got to keep coming past to see if there's any activity. And there hasn't been a lot until today.
For the slow motion video, I was using the Lumix G9 Mk2 at 120 frames per second with 4K. That gives me autofocus, which the OM-1 Mk2 doesn't. But then also I went a bit higher. I changed to HD, which we're looking at now, and this is 300 frames per second, so we're talking almost 10 times slow. And I've said before, I do love looking at birds in slow motion, and the slower the better. I just wish that I could get 300 frames per second 4K. I'll show you some pictures of a house martin's nest. This is what they do with all that mud. These were taken in 2011, so this was in my Canon days. I'm having to use flash, but the nests are very low down. It's a very low building. And I was lucky because birds were building a nest here, but other nests had got youngsters sticking out of them. So there was a variety of activity going on. But birds will take no notice of flash whatsoever. They don't notice a flash when it goes off, and there was 2 flash guns here. And then just outside they were collecting the mud, and this was a lovely spot, completely open. Now the camera I was using here was a Canon 1D Mark III. I do not remember how many frames per second you got with that camera, but possibly just 5 frames per second. So I only got the 2 frames of these birds as they came together. Whether they are fighting or mating, I don't know. And I didn't know I'd photographed it at the time. I had to wait until I looked at my pictures to realise I'd got 2 birds coming together. You don't get to see it at the time because the mirror's jumping up and down, you get a lot of blackout time. You're just struggling to keep the bird in the frame and hoping. Thanks for watching.